magical isn't the right word. It can be it's a language of its own. This kind of reaches off D.L. Birchfield's take, where he says it reflects the window into the spatial limitations of the minds of the speakers of the Indo-European language family. Now, let's unpack that a little bit. The Indo-European language family includes basically most of the languages of Europe. It excludes Basque and Hungarian, but it includes German and therefore English, which is a Germanic language. It also includes many of the languages of India, in particular Sanskrit. Now, when Professor Birchfield refers to the spatial limitations of the minds of the speakers of Indo-European languages, I was intrigued. Well, for one, English is my first language, and so I am a speaker of an Indo-European language. And I'm wondering what was in chess that was somehow not encapsulated by my. Let me back up. What was there about chess, and what did it open my mind up to that my first language, English, did not do? Now that's an interesting question, and I think it might be interesting to put it in the mind of someone who speaks another language or from another language family differently. And since this channel is mostly about Muskogee language, I'm wondering where the language comes in, where the language element comes into the perception of how one plays chess, amongst other types of thinking. Now, we know Muskogee is a subject, object, verb, language order. That it's actually fairly common around the world. And it's also common amongst the Turkic languages and the languages of Siberia and Central Asia. And I'd wondered, because if you've seen my video about, I call it Muskogee Einstein and Muskogee Einstein Part 2, I try to arrange the mathematical symbols of Einstein's theory of relativity in the syntax which they would have to be in Muskogee. In addition, I have to translate it into Muskogee. And so I wondered if, let's say, if Muskogee had a university and everything was taught in Muskogee, not just the Muskogee language, but the science and the physics and everything else, how could Einstein's theory of relativity, or for that matter, any mathematical formula, how would it be expressed in Muskogee, a non-Indo-European language? So I got me interested in some of the languages of Central Asia, and some of them are, of course, they've been into the Soviet sphere for a long time and the Russian sphere, but some of their scientific thinking must be done in the Turkic languages, which, of course, in many ways are similar to the Native American languages. So I did, well, back to that. Any case, so this is about language, and this is about chess. And chess is in its own way is its own language. I mean, you could sit down to a chessboard with someone who speaks a totally different language, and you and this other person, the other opponent, do not speak a language in common except the language of chess itself. Chess could be played by, I assume, a deaf person or a blind person, because there's, of course, the tactile feature. You could, of course, feel the pieces, and of course, one could make a braille chessboard, I imagine, with the lines raised. So, assumingly that people who are sight impaired and hearing impaired could also play chess with the same ability and level as anyone with those senses in full force. So these are just some of the things that fascinated me about chess. Another thing about chess is that, unlike cards, the card games, the players hide the cards from each other. In chess, all the pieces are on the board. You can see everything your opponent sees. The only thing you can't see about your opponent is his or her intentions and plans, except by what evidence they have by the moves. So that makes chess a little different. It's not like there's someone in the dark trying to do something to you. It's all right in front. Well, I think that this had a lot to do with also Professor Birchfield's philosophy of life and strategy and other things, because he talks about how he was in the chess club and was an avid chess player as a high schooler in the late 1950s in Oklahoma. And I'm wondering how much it has to do with some of the geopolitical things going on right now in the world. How much of this has been influenced by people who have come up playing chess. I have a lot to say also about Professor Birchfield and the book. There are other things in the book of interest and intrigue that intrigue me besides his chapter about chess. But I recommend the read. If you can find a book, it's probably online still, and you can you'll get a different treat. He doesn't pander to some of the same sensibilities you get with a lot of books supposedly. It doesn't pander to the left liberal sensibilities, which sometimes is dominant in books by other Native American authors, and it shocks you a little bit. Sometimes it seems almost like he's right wing, but you realize these types of thinking could easily exist inside a Native nation like the Choctaw or any other Native nation. And while he's also seems right wing, he's not a real big fan of the whole Judeo Christian religious enterprise either. And I believe actually his father was a Baptist preacher. So as I say, he is an intriguing mixture of ideas and thoughts and humor. He really takes an interesting look at North American society and Anglo American society and really looks at it from a tribal point of view and looks at the dominant group in Anglo American society as a tribal group, which is a tribal group which is in many ways as trapped in their tribal ways as any other tribe which they portray to you on National Geographic, who seem to be that they show people stuck in time and in their habits. And Birchfield says the same thing about the dominant society here. If you look at its Germanic roots, it's trapped in its Germanic tribal ways also, even while it has massive weaponry and technology that their medieval ancestors did not possess. So this is just Mega Kevin 49, not Mega Kevin 49, wanting to share some of my thoughts on chess, this beautiful game called chess, and the Choctaw author D.L. Birchfield, who made me look at it a little bit differently. And any of you who speak Choctaw or Muskogee or any of our Chickasaw, if you have any perspectives about chess in how it may be perceived differently described in Choctaw or Chickasaw or Muskogee, I'd feel free to put them in the comment section. I'm intrigued by this whole idea. So I will say, until next time, Chihi Chatlis.